we are going to be talking about reservoirs and transfers within the water cycle. And so while these may be new words to you, there are things that we have already learned about. We're just giving them a new name. So from this video, you should be able to give a definition of a reservoir and transfer, understand their purpose in the water cycle and what can cause them, and be able to identify them in the water cycle. So let's take a look. So we're going to start with a transfer. So a transfer is a water movement. So it's transferring the water from one place to another. So when you see water moving, it was here, now it's here. So the transfer is a water transfer, is any part of the water cycle where the water is being moved. So what is the purpose of it? It's being moved. Which exactly is what that says here. The purpose is to move water from one location to another. And the cause of this can be energy, right? Heat energy can make water evaporate and move. When things become dense enough, then gravity will pull them down, right? Runoff will go down. So energy, density, and gravity all help move the water around. So let's take a look at some examples in the water cycle. So evaporation, right? It starts liquid to gas. It's moving from earth to into up in the air because it's less dense. Precipitation is doing the opposite. It's starting up high. It's becoming dense enough. It gets pulled back down, but it's moving from one place to another. Transpiration, exactly like evaporation, but from plants. So the water's moving from the plant to the atmosphere. Runoff, the water's moving from one place to another. We'll especially see this in the springtime in mountains. The water will be in the mountains and run down. So all of these are water movement. Rivers, the whole purpose of a river is to transport water to another location. Condensation, so even though, right, when we see the effect of condensation and we see the end result, the liquid, but it started as a vapor and it came back together and now it's a liquid. So it was moving from the atmosphere back packing together into that liquid. So condensation is still a transfer. Okay, we've also got the infiltration, right? It goes into the soil and then it percolates down. So it goes in and then down. Infiltration, percolation. And so those are parts of the water cycle that you'll see naturally, but then there's lots of other ways that water can move that humans create, right? When I drink the water, I'm moving it from the water bottle into my body. So I transferred that water. So anytime water moves from one place to another or from one state to another, that is a transfer. We are transferring the water, moving the water. So the reservoir is the opposite of that. So a reservoir is where the water is being held. So a water reservoir is anywhere that water is stopped and it's being held for extended periods of time. So now we know molecules are always moving. That's not what it means by stopped. So what that means is it's just being held in that location. So yes, within that, let's see. Right? Oh! Guys, I literally, oh my gosh, I think my chair just Okay, well, I hope you enjoy this video. That was terrifying. Okay, so right, I've got water in here, and I know that the water in here is moving, but it's being held in here. That's the purpose of a reservoir. So it's not like, right, it's not freezing the molecules and making them not move. The water's still moving, but it's not moving from one location to another. It's holding it. That's what a reservoir is. So it's going to hold it there for an extended, long period of time. I am terrified to move on this chair. I'm pretty sure it's broken. Okay, so the purpose of a reservoir is to store the water. And the cause of all reservoirs is gravity, right? So I've got these reservoirs, gravity pulled that water down, and now it's being held in this location. So let's look at some examples of how gravity can cause these reservoirs. So here we have an ocean, right? That liquid is heavy enough that gravity is keeping it down on the earth. Lakes are a smaller, right? So I know this water is moving, but it's still being held in that ocean. It's not moving to a different place. So even it's still in the ocean, it's not moving to a different location. That's a transfer, is moving somewhere else, okay? So you've got a lake, right? It's storing that water. So it's being held and stored as a reservoir. Clouds, so even though clouds move across the sky, clouds don't just move on their own. So wind can help it transfer, but the actual cloud is a storage. It is storing the water inside of it. And here we just have air. So it's got vapor in it, and it's just holding that. It's a place for that liquid, or not liquid, it's not a liquid, the vapor to be. I'm all shaken up from my near-death experience there on my chair. And groundwater is just being held in the ground. So, right, it infiltrated, which is a transfer. It percolated, which is a transfer. And then gravity is just pulling it down, and it's being held there in the ground. So, right, all of these reservoirs on the earth, gravity's pulling them down. Snowpack, right? It was dense enough, it fell to the ground. Gravity's keeping it down. So snow, it's not moving anywhere. It's just being held on that mountain. Vegetation, the trees, plants, leaves, bushes, grass, all of these are holding water in their roots and in their leaves. And animals can also hold water inside them. So yes, an animal can move, and it can move it. But the animal, like in your body, is just holding that water. It's a storage place for it. So you just have to decide, is the purpose of it to go from one place to another? That's a transfer. Or is the purpose just to hold the water and store it in there? So let's take a look at the water cycle here and just identify just a few reservoirs and transfers, right? So evaporation, the water moved, that's a transfer. When it condenses back into the cloud, so it doesn't say condensation, but condensation happened right there. So it transferred again. Precipitation is a transfer. This runoff or river, whatever you want to call it, is a transfer. Their stream is a transfer. It percolated, it infiltrated is a transfer. Transpiration is a transfer. So anytime it's moving, we've got a transfer. So now let's look at some of those storage places. So the ocean is a reservoir holding the water. The cloud is a reservoir holding the water. More clouds. We've got a glacier here, or snowpack holding water in it. That's a reservoir. This lake is a reservoir. So the river transported it, and now the lake is holding it. So transfer, and then we have our reservoir. This groundwater here is a reservoir. This vegetation is a reservoir. All of this air has vapor in it. That is a reservoir. So tons of reservoirs, tons of transfers that you're going to find in the water cycle.